Welcome back, everybody. I'm going to go over week's 3 assignments for a CIT 326. I'm going to go ahead and jump right in because there's a lot to cover. So yeah, scenario number one. Owner has questions for me. He's concerned about some security. He wants to know in part A, he wants to know Windows authentication over SQL authentication. So Windows authentication is a method for authenticating the user, right? Just authentication in general. It will be the same login as you'd use to access your Windows computer. If you type in your password, it'll be the same thing. It'll try to use it. SQL authentication is more for logins, just to SQL, so not Windows, which means that you could have two separate profiles to log in into one or the other. But you could save time if you just do Windows. The next thing that I want to go ahead and go into is part B. There's a difference between authentication, auth, and authorization. So authenticating verifies your identity, who you are, to be able to access what you need to see, or to be able to access a server instance. In this case, it's a login. The authorization focuses more on the user and what that user is allowed to access. Let's say a certain database. In this case, I have this example here. I have a user who has only a SQL authentication, first to connect to the server. Then he only has access to sales orders. He can only see the schema of Office that I created, and the user is not authorized to see any other database other than sales. That's authorization. He's not authorized to see any other schema, but he was able to authenticate that, yeah, I'm Jorge the clerk in this example. So the other question here, or part C, says, what if we grant select permissions on a table to the fixed role called public? Now, public is something that is given to everyone. I address this here. That role is given to everyone, any new user. So it will basically allow a new user to be able to read tables of the database right away. And it could be dangerous because what if they're not supposed to see it? We do not want to give them that permission. So best thing to do is, as a database administrator, make sure you set all those things up, give them the right rules before you give out the SQL login credentials. So that concludes scenario number one. Scenario number two here, we're going to create schemas, right? We're going to create 4 new schemas in total, two new schemas for the bowling database and 2 for the recipes. I'm just going to jump right in there, part A. I'm going to make sure that I'm in the right database, and I am going to run the create schema command. And the schema, I'm going to name it members and game for the next one. And inside the recipes database, I'm going to create one called recipe and ingredient. So for scenario, the next one in part B is what we're going to do is from the DVO schema, we're going to transfer that or transfer those into the members or the game schema that I just created for the bowling, and the recipes obviously for recipe and ingredient. So in here, we're going to use the alter schema command and the transfer. Alter schema says in this schema, alter this schema, which is members, and we want to transfer this table that comes from the DVO schema into the member schema. So transfer this schema and this table over to the members. So now in the future, it'll be members dot bowler dot score. So that's what it's going to do with each one, and I do it for each one. I do it one by one just to make sure I do it. And after you've done it, I do recommend refreshing your database. That will allow you to see the new schemas attached to those tables. So as you can see, like what I did here, game, match games, and for bowler scores members. The next thing I want to talk about, well, next one, part C, we got to create 4 new logins, 2 for the recipes database, and then 2 for the bowling database. And we only want to give them the select permissions, 1 schema per user, basically. So we'll create our logins. We're going to call them bowler1, easy password, and the default database. I like giving them a default. That way they just connect and go straight to the database they're supposed to. Here's bowler2, and then the recipes database, recipes1, and then we're going to do recipes2 in here. Kind of the same thing, default schema. It's awesome. It helps, or sorry, default database. It helps them get there quicker. After we do that, we are gonna map to the schemas, right? So for bowler one, we're gonna create first a user, and after we do that, I'm gonna give them a default schema, which is members, and then we're gonna give them the grant, which is grant select on, and then we'll give them the schema to bowler one. And we do the same. First, we create the user for this login. Then we alter the user and tell them, hey, this is your default schema. It saves time. And then grant select on schema. We only tell, okay, only in game you can select. So, and then here goes the recipe, and that is scenario 2. For scenario 3, I'm gonna determine as a database administrator which grants we're supposed to give to logins in this case. And here are the ones that I decided to do for A. So for future users inside the entertainment agency example here, I created a new login called entertainer1, password, and then default database. You don't have to do default database, but I like it. You create a user inside that database and you do this login or entertainer1, and then here's the command to be able to do this DCLs. In other words, the grants of my choice that I selected. They insert, the select, and the delete on this schema and on this table, and to who? This user, entertainer1. So I did that. With part B, it tells you that you get smarter. I am getting smarter, ladies and gentlemen. But we're going to make sure that we're using the right database. We're going to alter the role, and we're going to add a member into that role, the entertainer1 that we created. The role that we're going to give him is the data reader. That means that he can only, or he or she can only select from the database. It can only read, but they cannot do anything else. And then we're going to get rid of the delete and the insert that we did before, just to verify we revoke those permissions there. Part C, create 2 new logins and users and add them to the roles. And we're going to connect to entertainer2 just to make sure that we're good here. So we're going to create the login, right? Same thing, create login, default database. Here's my password. Same with this, super fast. Create the user inside, kind of like what we did before. And then we're just going to add them straight away to the data reader role. And here's what we have. So what I'm going to do on the left side, I'm going to go ahead and go to entertainer2 and connect. I'm going to go to databases, and if I try to go somewhere else here instead of the entertainment legacy, it should tell me you do not have access. That's perfect. That's what we want. But if I try to go to the entertainment one, oh, voila, you can open it up. That's great. That's what we wanted to do. Here are the files. I can see all of this. And if I wanted to select them, we just select top 100. And that's how it looks. And the last one, the last scenario, so we just concluded the last scenario here. We just want to show evidence that we created these new schemas, these new logins, new roles, right, that were just created. So that's what I'm going to do for part 1, or part A. I am so sorry, part A. I'm just going to select here F5 on my keyboard. We can see that we created bowler 1, bowler 2, recipes, and the entertainers. Inside the recipes database, we created recipe and ingredient. And then, let me see if I can go down. Inside there, we've also seen that we have the members in the game schema as well for the bowling league. If we keep scrolling down, we get to see who are the users in there: bowler 1, bowler 2 for the bowling one, and then recipes 1, recipes 2. So it's excellent. It did do it. I'm going to hit Control R to get rid of my results. And the last one is for part B is any useful database, security data dictionary. I think it's important, and I chose remote logins. That is very important to know what other logins, not just the ones that are local, but other logins that are coming from remote locations in here. So super important to know. If you see someone in there that's not supposed to be there, huge problem, right? We need to go ahead and remote rights, do whatever we need to make sure that our database is safe. And that concludes this last scenario, and I hope you all enjoyed.